So I'm just, bringing this up just to underscore what the biological reality is. Now, when you take that 10-year-old child and you comply with his request to be considered a girl, and you are following, of course, the directions of all the medical organizations, well, let's just call it what it is. You're enforcing a falsehood. He is not a girl, and he can never be a girl. And by the way, in a developing brain, every experience in your life, everything you hear and you see and you experience creates a memory, and it actually changes the brain. Okay, it has an impact. We know this because we studied brain plasticity, that the actual functioning of and the wiring between the neurons in the brain is impacted by our experience. And I argue in the book, don't we need to consider the impact on the brain of these young people? Their brains are still developing. Your brain is developing until you're 25 years old, or mid-20s, okay? I can't say a specific age. So being called, instead of Johnny, being called Emily, hundreds of times a day by everyone that knows you, and being called she and her by everyone that knows you at school, at home, everywhere, over and over and over again. And everyone trying to think of you as a girl, that's going to have an impact. So, okay, an impact on the brain, that's one thing. But what about an impact on, later on, if the child is going to have doubts. They may not express them or acknowledge them. But when they do have doubts at some point, do you understand how difficult it is for a child who already is young, has premorbid conditions, might be on the autism spectrum, the whole, all these various emotional conditions, to stand up and say to the adults, I'm not sure. Maybe I am, Johnny. We have to be thinking about that, because we put them with this social affirmation, we put them on an expressway toward the blockers, toward these interventions that are going to have permanent effects, and some of them, huge, life-altering effects. Not being able to have biological children, what's bigger than all that? What could we possibly be doing to these kids that would be more massively impacting their futures, their relationships, the kind of lives that they're going to have?
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very simple. Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth. On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. A process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. Can you believe this? I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age. I will then ask Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or pay for these procedures, and pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. It'll go very quickly. I will declare that any hospital or healthcare provider that participates in the chemical or physical mutilation of minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards for Medicaid and Medicare, and will be terminated from the program immediately. Furthermore, I will support the creation of a private right of action for victims to sue doctors who have unforgivably performed these procedures on minor children. The Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients, in this case, very vulnerable. We will also investigate whether Big Pharma or others have illegally marketed hormones and puberty blockers which are in no way licensed or approved for this use. My Department of Education will inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child that they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will be faced with severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination and the elimination of federal funding. As part of our new credentialing body for teachers, we will promote positive education about the nuclear family, the roles of mothers and fathers, and celebrating rather than erasing the things that make men and women different and unique. I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth. The bill will also make clear that Title IX prohibits men from participating in women's sports, and we will protect the rights of parents from being forced to allow their minor child to assume a gender which is new and an identity without the parents' consent. The identity will not be new, and it will not be without parental consent. No serious country should be telling its children that they were born with the wrong gender, a concept that was never heard of in all of human history. Nobody's ever heard of this, what's happening today. It was all when the radical left invented it just a few years ago. Under my leadership, this madness will end. Thank you very much.